Those that are joining us remotely through YouTube, and also welcome our interim detachment commander, Brent Elbers. Welcome, Brent. I know you're just here for a good time, not a long time, but welcome. And I will just call upon Sue to do our land acknowledgement.
We respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We acknowledge a shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial.
Thanks, Sue. And everybody should have received your agendas ahead of time and posted online. Just proceed item 3, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none. You all have an agenda that's sent out. Just ask for if there's any additions, deletions to our agenda. If not, then I'll ask for a motion for the adoption of the agenda. Member Danielson, Member Carter, all in favor? Thank you. And item 5. Sorry, I'll pass it to Pam to read our motion. I will get this right then eventually.
Moved by Member Danielson, seconded by Member Carter, be it resolved that the agenda for the May 7th, 2025 meeting of the Haliburton Highlands OPP Ontario Provincial Police Detachment Board be approved.
Thank you. All in favor? Approved. Thank you. And just before we get started, you'll notice throughout the document and oftentimes throughout our meetings, there's a lot of acronyms. If at any point you're unsure of an acronym, by all means, please ask. And if I can't clarify, I'll ask somebody else that can. Our detachment commanders might, there's a lot of them in here, and we just noticed in the last few meetings, sometimes people are shaking their head wondering what they actually mean. So please don't hesitate just to throw your hand up and I'll try and capture you and ask for clarification. Next on our agenda is the adoption of the minutes from our previous meeting, the meeting of January 22nd, 2025. Again, they were sent out in your package. I'm hoping everybody had a chance to review them. Any questions, any additions, deletions? Seeing none, then I'll ask for a motion to accept the minutes from our January 22nd, 2025 meeting of the Haliburton Highlands OPP Detachment Board. Member Shevaduskas, did I get that right, Andy? Sure. Close. Seconded by Member Burton. Over to you, Pam.
Moved by Member Chevadukas and seconded by Member Burton, be it resolved that the minutes of the January 22nd, 2025 meeting of the Haliburton Highlands OPP Detachment Board be hereby approved.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have delegations and presentations, and at the request of a number of members, we have with us joining remotely shortly is Paul Welsh, Director of Planning and Development for the Municipality of Brighton, to share a presentation with us on automated speed enforcement. And again, thanks to our detachment commander, Mike Cavanaugh, for setting this up for us and arranging for them to speak to us today. Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you?
Hello, sir. How are you, Paul?
I'm well, thank you.
Thanks for joining us today.
No problem.
And, I have a copy of your slide deck, but the rest of the board does not. And we're going to see if we can pull it up here on the screen as you go, or share your screen as we go.
Sure, I can share my screen.
That would be great. That's fabulous. Thanks very much, Paul. The floor is all yours.
Okay. So just I'm zooming in here from the municipality of Brighton. Municipality of Brighton is just located east of the CFB Trenton, if folks are familiar with that particular airbase. And we're probably better known for the municipality that has Presqu'île Provincial Park located within our boundaries. And we're a relatively small municipality. We're a lower tier, and we're amalgamation of the former village of Brighton and the township of Brighton. Our total population is around 13,000, and we have the 401 dissecting our municipality geographically with about to the southern third where the urban area is, south of the 401, and the north 401 is our rural 2/3 of our geographic area. So that gives you a bit of a context of the character of our municipality and some of the traffic issues we might be contending with from time to time. So I guess the first question is what is automated speed enforcement? So that's what I'm here to generally discuss or talk about. We call it simply ASE, and it's a tool that uses speed cameras, of course, to capture the speed of the vehicles and to capture the image of the vehicle, in particular its license plate, and then present that in the form of a penalty notice to a person who has been speeding, or the owner of the vehicle who has been speeding. I should be more precise there. It is to be used together with other traffic management techniques and policies. MTO will remind us very quickly about the need to have it as a part of a broader program integrated with other considerations. And the ASE program was first introduced through an amendment to the Highway Traffic Act and through the Safer Schools Zones Act in 17. And it only applies to designated school zones and designated community safety zones. And then they brought in regulations in 2020 that really activated the legislation, and many municipalities thereafter began to adopt the program. The cameras capture the data, it's put through some software, and then the regulations specify what fine amounts will apply. So much over, say, if you're in a 40-kilometer posted zone and you're driving 60 kilometers, that the fines appropriate for that speed infraction are prescribed right in the regulations. And the penalty notice is issued to the vehicle owner, not to the driver, of course. So it made reference to there needing to be cameras, because there's two actually for traffic coming each direction. There's also another little device called a speed tracker, and it's basically a black hat device, if you're familiar with that just monitors the volumes of the traffic. And it can do some speed capture as well, but just never had the camera on it. So but that helps calibrate your cameras, and it helps capture some of the volumes, and it really assists in delivering reports to MTO as will be required by MTO. So the cameras capture two photos actually, just for clarity and making sure that the license plate is accurate. And the bylaw enforcement officer, or the designated officer for the municipality that you would specify, doesn't have to be a bylaw enforcement officer. It can be someone who's simply passed the course with MTO and has been designated by the municipality to perform this function. And that person will then process those images and information delivered by the camera and accompanying software, and then together with that data, basically link or upload it to the MTO Aries database, because it brings in that that's the source of the license plate and vehicle owner. And then we have a complete system at that point, and we can then issue the penalty notice with the images, with the captured data about the speed, together with the license plate and the name of the vehicle owner. And that's sent out by just regular mail. There's no need to do it by registered mail or anything like that. The owner is giving the option to pay the fine. It can be paid right on the software that's provided, and so about 80% of people will do that. We haven't fully implemented the program yet, so we don't know what our numbers are going to be, but what I'm hearing is that it's about 80%. We'll just do it online, and another 20% will come in and pay it in person. And there's a fraction there that will appeal, but we can talk about that in a little bit. An appeal would, first step in an appeal is a reference to a screening officer. So in the municipality of Brighton, we don't use provincial offenses for automated speed enforcement. We apply a tool under the Municipal Act called the Administrative Monetary Penalty, or AP, Administrative Penalty. And that is something that can run parallel to the Provincial Offences Office, or POA as we all refer to it. I describe it there. So most municipalities are trying to move towards AMP system for minor or low-key infractions. We have one case where someone has permitted occupancy before an occupancy permit was given under the Building Code Act, and that's been before the POA for almost 2 years now for what is amounting to be a relatively simple matter. And we're all kind of shaking our heads. We should have went to the AMP route for this. So I think more and more places are going to go AMP route. MTO has set up that option, separate regulations for AMPs, and in terms of how municipalities are there to process or administer them. And the roles of the screening officer. Screening officer will receive that initial stage of appeal, and it's called an administrative review. That screening officer will just see whether or not the person, in our case, the bylaw enforcement officer, whether they've issued the penalty notice accurately. And if there's any reason not to have that penalty notice stay firm. And then the person has the option, if they don't like the decision of the screening officer, that it should go to a hearings review officer. According to Municipal Act, the hearings review officer needs to be independent of the municipality. And for Brighton, we've hired a lawyer who's doing hearings for both Brighton and for the town of Coburg next door to us. So when paying the fine, there's the infraction as applicable to the regulations, and then in addition to that, MTO charges a license plate access fee of $8.50 per infraction, and the Ministry of Attorney General charges $4 for a victim surcharge. So that's similar to any other speeding ticket, is my understanding. Maybe we can get some clarification on that if need be, but I think that's my understanding. So the software vendor that municipality of Brighton has engaged goes by the name of Dacratech. They're out of Chicago. There's several of them now, and they all do things a little bit differently. Some are leasing their cameras and speed detection hardware and software, and basically have farmed out the program altogether. We've decided to do it more in-house as much as possible. So we've purchased the cameras, and that's an option through Dacratech with another firm that they're associated with named Traffic Logics. And they've provided good service, and we're just onboarding the software now. And that software will be the place where the person paying the fine will go, and there'll be links within it and to pay the fines. And then Dacratech will then quarterly remit to the municipality its reimbursement for its portion. They charge a $10 per penalty order, and which I understand is somewhat lower than what some of the other purveyors of speed cameras and software are offering. I've skipped ahead and really kind of spoke about the appeals for automated speed enforcement penalty notices, so I think we can bypass that a little bit. And I already talked about AMPs. The Ministry of Attorney General is the place where you put the victim charge towards. But it's also important to keep in mind the Information and Privacy Commission of Ontario. So we're dealing with very personal information of license plate data and their addresses and their names. Ministry of Transportation is pretty strict with municipalities and how they access their ARIES database system and how we would process it for the purposes of this program. And we need to also be cognizant that MTO will audit municipalities, making sure they are consistent with their expectations. Their expectations are expressed through an agreement, and it's a fairly detailed agreement, and it's really lays down requirements of the municipality in implementing an ASC program that you have your privacy impact assessment done on the organizational level to make sure that there's no mishandling of that personal information and getting it made viewable or accessible or distributable, as the case may be, by unauthorized persons. There's a need for reporting to MTO on a regular basis, and the agreement all specifies that and all lays it out. So it's important to be very cognizant and adherent of that agreement. And we've just recently had MTO sign our agreement, and that is the kickstart to the required 90-day notice to the public that automated speed enforcement is beginning. So there's a bit of the laundry list referred to in the agreement. They strongly recommend municipalities consult with a joint processing center that's been established. The City of Toronto was kind of the first, and we have been in contact with them, and they've been very helpful in giving us some direction and some kind of calibration of what resources would be required to implement the program. The expectation of MTO is that municipalities collaborate, preferably through joint processing centers, so that there's a consistent approach in the driver's experience and how automated speed enforcement is to be implemented and processed. They're fairly strict on the third-party vendors. So I mentioned Dacratech as being our third-party vendor for software. They will be using a Canadian-based cloud-based service. So it's Azure, so it's a Microsoft product. And so they've been able to meet Ontario demands in terms of the third-party vendor status. It's offered and required, and something I think should be done first thing is any staff who plan on being the designated official for daily operations of the ASC to take the course that MTO is expecting persons to do. There's a lot of information in there, and there's a lot of clarity as to do's and don'ts. And it's their effort to do their own due diligence, making sure municipalities are adhering to mostly the privacy impact assessment requirements and reporting requirements, that you're also showing that the program is being effective in reducing speed problems. So here's a bit of a rough estimate of some of the cash flow that would be resulting, as I expect to happen once we do have a cut date on July 14th. So the top row is the speed fine classes. So the first column there is speeds 51 to 55. So we're talking about a 40-kilometer-hour speed limit zone. So 51 is 11 over. 11 kilometers over the posted speed. And so I just took the average between that is 53. And below that is the amount of kilometers over the 40 kilometers per hour posted speed. So it's 13. The regulations specify that person speeding in that range is to be charged $7.50 per kilometer over that within that speed range. So the average fine per vehicle is $97.50. we've had black hat data running on that segment of the school zone. And so we're getting a volume of vehicles over that 13-day period of 2,681. I am anticipating once the program is fully in effect that we're going to see some reduced volumes. So it's just a real guesstimate that maybe it's going to be reduced to about 25% of that 2681. So the volumes will be down to 25% of the pre-program amount. We've already seen some indications that it's going to be correcting downward to that level because we got some signs put up about coming soon. And there has been a very clear change in driver behavior in terms of speeding. So the gross revenue per week is basically the 670 by the average fine per vehicle. And then we see the DACRATEC fee, and that's $10 per penalty notice to give a net gross revenue per week. So that's been corrected. Mr. Chairman, I apologize. The DACRATEC fee was too high on the version that you received earlier. I made this correction this morning. So the net gross revenues per week are a little higher than what you're seeing here. And so on the total over a week, and this is just a sample week in bridging March to April, was 93,350. So that's pre-staff time and pre-equipment and capital investment. So that's the end of my. Here's just a reference if you need to do further research. The Automated Speed Enforcement Association of Ontario has some good references, and they've been sponsored or supported by MTO to present the information and help municipalities bring about an effective program. And so this is just the time for some questions. I'm sure I've kind of covered quite a bit. I hope I've touched on the right spots that everyone was having some curiosity about. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate your time today and appreciate the presentation. I have made those amendments on the slide deck that we've got here, so appreciate that. I know there's a couple of hands up for questions, so I'll first member Hodgson and then member Danielson.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I have one general question and a couple specifics, if I could indulge the committee. What would drive this? That you have a lot of accidents? Like, what would initiate you wanting to do this? First of all, is it based on stats or safeties, or was there issues? Secondly, who determines what a community safety zone is, and how's that done? Again, is that done by stats on the school zone? I think it's pretty straightforward, but who would decide? Is MTO, like, MTO has to say yes, or they just for their roads? Like, does the municipality decide what's a community safety zone? Thank you.
Yeah, yes, through the chair. That's a good question. Yeah, community safety zones are established by municipal bylaw under, I think it's the Highway Traffic Act, not the Public Highways Improvement Act, but there is statutory basis for municipal bylaw for adopting a community safety zone. And I think wisely, you'd also have a policy. When do you want to establish these zones? There's more flexibility under the regulations and statutes about what municipality can constitute to be a community safety zone, but there is legislative framework for that, giving some direction. A more recent experience is we did establish a community safety zone in one segment of rural road that I think in retrospect maybe wouldn't have fully qualified as such. It was more response to complaints on speed, although it was a very low volume rural road posted at 80 kilometers. So I think it would be wise to have a policy, and then once you have a policy, establish your bylaws. But yeah, there's a statutory basis for it and statutory direction for where and where not to adopt your community safety zones. So for Brighton, like I said, we're a pretty small municipality. We only have the one school, or we have a few school zones and two community safety zones, but we're only implementing ASE in the one particular school zone. And to answer your first question, you were wondering what the problem was. Yeah, around this particular area that we're going to start things off at, it's a combination of a high school and a public school. And Black Cat data was suggesting that speeds were still pretty high. And we're hearing some complaints from some of the crossing guards at a crosswalk there that, people just aren't, for whatever reason, just not noticing the crossing guard. It's a very up-to-date, lit, painted crosswalk, but still there are some problems there. So it was our desire to bring about that safety with the schools there.
Thanks, Paul. Member Danielson.
Thanks for the presentation. This is an interesting thing to consider. I'm wondering what the initial outlay cost for the cameras was, and the consideration for the staff that's required, staff time that's required, as well as a possibility of hiring a lawyer or somebody with legal experience to do it, the appeal process. I'm assuming that those costs would be offset by reduction in costs from the OPP?
So start with the first aspect of the question. The cost for municipality of Brighton, we decided to purchase the cameras, and that was about, so two of them is around $60,000, together with a speed tracker, which is basically a Black Cat. So those little black boxes you see by the road that are counting traffic volumes. But this is a little bit more sophisticated than that. It works on a LiDAR system, I think the vendor said. And so our system's a pole-mounted system. You see other places where it's put on a pad. It's like a little gray box put on a concrete pad. So, there's a fairly low capital cost there. It's, I think the speed tracker was another 6,000, so under 70,000. And, that's not, I guess, a low cost, but in relation to the revenues that will support the cost, it's relatively low. And in that last chart, I showed that we'd be doing about 5,000 penalty notices per week. And yeah, that's gonna be some time. So I suspect we're gonna have to dedicate at least one person to it. And we have two bylaw enforcement officers here, so they'll both be doing it, backing each other up as needed. And if you starting on board our software, it's not an automated system. So the bylaw enforcement officer sees the image brought in by the system, verifies the address or the license plate rather, and then basically clicks submit. And then the system will also show license plates that it couldn't quite make out. And so it'll have two lines in it. One, this is what we think the license plate number is, and this is what MTO database is bringing up that it is. And then so there is some visual cues that the operator needs to examine and be confident that is accurate before submitting it to the MTO ARIES system. So it is labor intensive for sure. So that's a good question. And we're also concerned about how much over-the-counter traffic we're going to have with people either paying their fines or complaining about it. And again, the Joint Processing Center in Toronto were helpful in that regard, as well as the purveyors of the Dacrytech software. So these are people who have some legal background down in the States, and they provide this service throughout the States. Canada is just kind of a new entry for them. And so they had some good stats for us as well. So really, it comes down to maybe 2% of the people will actually appeal. Maybe 5% get to the screening officer, they hear what the screening officer has to say, and they change their mind. And maybe 2% try to actually appeal. Those aren't too bad numbers. So I don't think the administrative burden is going to be quite as bad as we first feared. I hope that I answered all your questions there.
If I can jump in, Member Danielson, and I'll ask our detachment commander to weigh in as well. But the second part of your question was around, does it eliminate the need for then OPP resources to do that same enforcement? And this is intended to augment or to be part of a municipal traffic safety plan. So I don't think it, and correct me, Paul, I don't, in the municipalities that I am aware that have done it, it hasn't necessarily reduced the enforcement being done by the OPP. It augments it. And, you know, there's that fine edge between technology enforcement versus that human contact enforcement, right? And there's pros and cons to both. You know, it's kind of hard to yell at a camera like they can yell at an officer, but at the same time, it also eliminates that need for an interaction, a personal interaction, to see other things that are in the vehicle, to engage that person in some prevention techniques and things like that. So I don't think it's ever intended to replace the OPP officers or any other police officer doing their job, but it's there to augment it. Mike, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I would agree. It's going to augment the enforcement, especially in those community safety zone areas, where you would perhaps have an officer on a directed patrol in that area for 1, maybe 2 hours during a particular day or a particular shift. This equipment is steadfast, and it's going to be a more consistent enforcement tool in those areas.
Thanks, Mike. So I think we have member Shevadukis and then member Carter. Questions?
Yes, Paul, great presentation. Great presentation. Thank you for all the information. I have a couple of questions that you might be able to answer. This upper permitted limit, is that something that's set by the municipality? Like if it's a 40-kilometer zone, it sounds like from what I got from the presentation that anything over 10 kilometers over and that camera's going to start taking a picture. Am I correct in saying that?
You're generally correct, yes.
Okay, so does the municipality determine where the cutoff point is? Is it going to be 10? Is it going to be 15? Is it up to the municipality?
It is, yes. So
Okay.
with
All
the direction of the province is to have it as at the administrative level so that it's not something that would be somebody can go to the local council and complain about and have council give direction saying change that number. So it's meant to be really about safety and that be done administratively and preferably collaboratively among municipalities in the area, so there's a consistent approach. And so that's what the direction to some of the joint processing centers has been, to make sure you're trying to do a fairly consistent approach. That last reference on the slide, the ASE Ontario, they have some good references, and their guidance is to initiate penalty notices at 11 kilometers over the posted speed. And so municipalities can go lower, they can go higher, but that's the guidance that's given.
All right. The other part that I was going to ask you about is you get the screening officer that, and I'm just going to go along here. If you get one of these speeding infractions that you receive in the mail, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you phone and arrange for a screening officer and you determine, you plead your case to him, and if you're not happy, then you go to the hearing review officer. Is that correct?
Under the AMP system, yes.
Okay, so once a person gets fined, whatever money they get fined, they can pay it at the municipal level, or does it go to MTO for collection in case they don't pay?
It goes through the website, and for in our instance, it's the software purveyor called Dacritech. So they provide the link to where to pay it, and then Dacritech then in turn reimburses the municipality. But a person who wants to come to the counter and pay, they're eligible to do so, and then staff would do the payment through Dacritech's link. And then, so none of the money goes through MTO except when the payment is made. There's built-in links that will pay the MTO charge directly.
If I can help out, for non-payment, it then stays as an outstanding balance when your license is renewed.
That's where I was
License
going.
plate's renewed. So
That's where I was
That's
going.
correct. That's
Yeah,
correct.
okay. All right. And there's just one other question I have for you is anything that's involved here is, and if I may define it, is no more than a red light camera, an infraction where there's no points attached to the infraction of the speeding from this system that you're talking about?
Correct. No demerit points. Correct.
Well, there's no demerit points, so it doesn't go on the person's driver's abstract either.
Correct.
So the driver's abstract is not, insurance companies would not know about this.
Yeah, I don't think they would.
Okay, because I'm just saying every 2 years approximately, insurance companies do an abstract search on just about everybody. So it wouldn't appear on the abstract. All right, thank you very much, Paul.
Member Carter?
So I guess my question is, what's the objective? I assume the objective is not to generate cash, although that could be debatable. But if it is for safety, we created a community safety zone here and put in units that just generate your speed. It just flashes what your speed is. Um, we first of all put them up, and they were remaining blank, but we were recording the speed so we could get what the averages were. And then when we put up the signs that tell you what your speed is, there was a reduction in speed on average. And, we feel that is part of what our objective was. And then also, if there is a community zone, it's easier to get OPP to enforce in that zone. So did you go out and try other methods before going to this level to try to see, again, if it's a safety issue, did you see if there were other ways to reduce speed before you went to this?
Yeah, we've had the typical "this is your speed" flashing, the solar powered "this is your speed" mobile sign. So we have two of those that we rotate throughout the municipality, and so from time to time we've had it on the segment of highway, yes. But you make a good point that this is not about generating revenues, and that's the biggest public criticism of this. And MTO cautions municipality not to use this program as simply a revenue generator. That you really need to have it part of a broader speed reduction program and safety program. So some of our at the staff level initial conversations are that we should be maybe looking at getting along the segment of school zone, and we need to get some better sidewalks in and some multi-use pathways as well, and to have some of these extra safety features for pedestrians so that there's better segregation of foot traffic and vehicle traffic.
Thank you. Member McKechnie?
Yeah, I think most of our municipalities have the same issue that we have in Dysart. Of course, the schools or hospitals and that designated community safety zones would be extremely important to be monitoring for sure. But I think we also have a lot of side roads. I know in Dysart I've got 2 or 3 right now that are dealing with it, and they're looking into trying to get us to implement something like this. But I think like you're saying that right now it's 50. I mean, I'm telling you, it's 50 kilometers on some of these roads, and the people want it at 40. So if the municipality designates the speed, is that correct, Paul?
That's correct. Yes,
So
we
let's
can.
say they do it
There's some
at,
standard speeds under the Highway Traffic Act, and there's some variations within the act, such as built-up areas that would infer the municipality should be reposting the speed to something lower. But generally it's under the Highway Traffic Act, and then we can take direction from TAC or the Transportation Advisory Council of Canada or the Ontario Traffic Manual. So we need to adhere to some of those standards. So it is fairly prescribed, but we do have some discretion there.
so I'll just make this kind of short and sweet. So if it was 45, it was designated at, and anybody over that would get a ticket. Is that correct?
And we probably will set a threshold for initiating the penalty notices some quantum over the posted maximum speeds. And it's probably going to be around 11 kilometers an hour as per the guidance by the Transportation Council of Ontario. for automatic speed enforcement. But yes, we do have that discretion, but we also want to be mindful of MTO's direction and try and be consistent across a broader geography by working with our neighbors on that who've also implemented a program. So it'd be, if it's a posted speed of 40, that we wouldn't issue a penalty notice until the speed of 51 kilometers an hour.
So I'm sure that most of the councils from all the other municipalities here have the same issue, that most of these roads, there's a lot of people walking, riding bikes, jogging, and of course, great concern there for safety. We all understand that. But I think there are also going to be a majority of them are going to end up getting one of these tickets, because that's pretty well the only people on a lot of these roads where there's going to be the traffic is going to be the residents. And that's, I'm in my situation, I'm trying to explain that to the taxpayer who wants these cameras on these designated roads. And I just think that it's going to be a tremendous expense and frustrate the residents quite a bit. Although I don't know how we slow them down, but I guess, like Councillor Carter said, the flashing lights, and I think we've tried that before, but I think that's something that I would recommend to Dysart to try again on a lot of these roads. I don't know how the rest of the councillors feel, but because we are very concerned. It's all about the people walking, riding, jogging, and that. So
That's been a broad discussion, I think, Member McKechnie, over many years, various traffic calming devices and speed bumps, speed humps, speed ditches, narrowing lanes, all kinds of things. I don't know that anybody's quite found the magic bullet yet on that one, but.
well, I think the big problem is you might not be having a coffee in the morning or a beer at night with your neighbor if you're the one who's complaining all the time when you're getting these tickets all the time because you're over the speed limit. Because I think we're all guilty at one time or another, and it's definitely a fine line, like you say.
Yeah. Yes. Member Burton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Paul. How has the project been received by the public?
Yeah, good question. So we've given public notice, and we've had our coming soon sign posted much sooner than our broader public notice. And I thought the phone would start ringing, but it hasn't. In fact, it's kind of been responded to with the sentiment that I'm hearing around the table here, and that is that we need to get better control on the speed situation. So we're hearing a mix of comments, but a lot of it's positive, and I think most of the negative will be heard once the tickets actually get issued. But so far, it's been very well received.
Thanks, Paul. And last comment question from our detachment commander.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for the presentation today. Just have it's a two-parter and they're not necessarily related. One, does the system have the ability to not find particular license plates, like for emergency vehicles or township vehicles that are working?
Yeah, good question. And we have received that same question from our fire chief. And yes, the DACRA system has what they refer to as a whitelist. So you can pre-populate the database with a series of license plates that would be considered exempt from the system. The bylaw enforcement officer administering or operating the system still needs to go in and validate that whitelist as it comes through too. But it does separate out the license plates that are in the line of duty. I'm more comfortable if I knew what the Highway Traffic Act said about a whitelist, but the system does provide for that opportunity.
Yeah, I'll confirm that the Highway Traffic Act does permit speeding, in the course of our duties, and same with EMS and fire. The second question I have is that you spoke about the Joint Processing Center in Toronto, and obviously they're going to be contracted out to do work for other municipalities. Is Brighton linked in with the Joint Processing Center, or are you independent? And does Brighton have the ability to do the administrative function for other municipalities, to be hired by them to process the speed cameras?
Sure, that's a good question again. This has been championed by a counselor who's no longer with us. Councillor Farrad is now deceased. He passed away not too long ago after really pushing hard for this program. And it was his particular vision to make Brighton a bit of a joint processing center. So we've been gearing up that way. So that's why we've been going the extra administrative mile to make MTO happy as an independent, while at the same time conferring with other joint processing centers to provide some consistency. So once we're up and running, we have some experience under our belt for some of the local driving patterns and behaviors here. Then we probably roll it out to some of the smaller adjacent municipalities who seem to also expressing interest.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Again, really appreciate your time today, Paul. And I'll just wrap up with a couple of comments if I can. Just our purpose for bringing the presentation to the board today was to educate the councillor members and other members of the board, because we anticipate we might get questions from the members of the community that we represent to say, can we do this? Can we do that? And I think we need to be very clear as to the role of the board. Any of these ASCs are a municipal responsibility, not necessarily a police board responsibility to engage in. And that complementary traffic safety initiative should be engaging with the detachment commander and their staff and doing the assessment of what, there's all different stages of how the police assess a traffic safety concern, whether it's the use of civilian staff, auxiliary staff, technology, things like that, before they determine there's a need for enforcement. So I think we need to just understand our role as a board and make sure we keep ourselves at arm's length and not start directing our detachment commander that you should work with the municipalities to implement these systems. That's a conversation that should be being had by the municipalities with our detachment commander. So that was the intent today, was really just to help educate the board on what these ASCs are all about and make sure you understood what our role was as a board and just to help obviously ensure community safety as much as we can. So with that, again, Paul, thank you very much for your time today. We do have your slide deck that we'll share with the members of the board if they wish it. And again, really appreciate you taking your time out of your day today.
Oh, you're very welcome. And if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Just so member Chevadukas, you had another.
Yeah, I was just going to advise.
Sorry.
Sorry, use your mic, just because it's
Especially the county councillors about this system. I mean, we're all for safety, absolutely. School zones, community safety zones, absolutely. Seeing the other side of the fence as I have over the past 15 years in the courts, one thing to think about is any offender that does get charged and receives this notice, I can tell you right now, from what I've handled in the past, if there's no points involved, they're really not that worried. Yes, it's for safety. Yes, we want our communities to be safer. But if I may make a suggestion to the counselors, maybe if you're gonna, like Walt, you were saying, municipal little roads, et cetera, maybe we can start off with safety zones and with hospital zones or school zones and for that. But anything that goes to the people that get caught, they just pay it. It's no different than the red light cameras that I defended years ago in Toronto. And that was the big thing. People don't care. Most of them, that's why they're probably getting 90% plus people corresponding. So is it a deterrent? I think that's the point. That's the point that I'm trying to make. I think there should be something. Absolutely. Always been in favor of that, but it's just something to think about.
it's I think it's still that fine line, prevention
Yes.
versus enforcement, right?
Absolutely,
And,
yeah.
parking a marked police cruiser
Yeah.
there
And
with
even
nobody in
more,
it can
and even,
sometimes.
sorry, Andrew, and to add to that, that's why I asked. It doesn't go on your driver's abstract. So if it's a 40-kilometer zone and you're doing 80, and normally that would be 4 points under the Provincial Offences Act, under the HTA, you're not getting any points, and your insurance company is never going to be aware of it. So just food for thought.
So again, thanks for that presentation. I don't think we need a motion or anything to receive it. It's just a delegation or presentation as part of our agenda. So unless there's any other questions or comments, we'll move on to our next item of business. So under our section 7 of our agenda, items of business, first one is 7.1. And maybe what I can do is just with the indulgence of the board, I see that we're joined by the CAO, who's here to assist us in 7.3. So if we could maybe move to 7.3 on our agenda to better utilize your time, Gary, if you'd like to join us, and we'll come back to 7.1 and 7.2 after we've.
Just in a small work territory, Paul Walsh and I started work on exactly the same day on October 2nd, 1989. He worked for the county of Hastings. I worked for the township of Thurlow at the same time. So it was a small world. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. I just wanted to take an opportunity just to talk, because this will be the first time the board has gone through the budget process with the county, and just kind of a brief outline. Currently, Sue will have the exact numbers. But currently, right now, there's a modest budget included in the county budget to cover the police services board, where it covers all your operational costs, as well as a portion of the wages for the staff support, which is primarily Sue and Pam, to cover the board. There was also a number, Sue, was it $20,000? I think $20,000, which was set aside for incidentals for the board, special projects, things of that nature. So that's the constant going into the budget. Unless we hear anything different from the board, that's what will be put forward into the budget. Now, with respect to our process, we're a bit sooner in the queue than you'll see maybe at some of the local municipalities, where we target to have our budget approved. We're on the first week of December. So we're in the process within the next few weeks, 3-4 weeks, we're starting our budget process going forward. That's all the internal pieces. Then we engage our county council reps with respect to the more advancement of things, if you will, going into the process. So given the frequency with which this board meets, I thought it was important to have a conversation today with respect to, so you can line yourself up in time with meeting the budget request. So as I said, as it stands now, if there's no changes to the request of the board, it's pretty straightforward. It's submitted, it's going in. We take care of the adjustments to staff on the staff pieces, and anything regarding that, we take care of those adjustments for you. With respect to anything regarding any projects or initiatives you want to put in place, this is where the process comes in, our new process comes into place. So we have it's called a budget adjustment process, whereby the program is identified by the board with the assistance of Sue, and a request is made for basically new money, and whatever that added on would be, it would be evaluated as totality with respect to what it is, what its benefit to the organization is, what its benefit is to the mandate of the board going forward. And then it's evaluated in the context of our other budget demands. And then those recommendations, they come up through my office and then go off into the package that's sent to council for consideration as we go forward. We look for any new requests. I think the final forms have to be submitted into finance by the end of August. I think it's the end of August, either August 1st or August 30th, one of the two, August 31st. And then from there, they're reviewed by they go through the departmental review and then reviewed by myself. And then we'll make a final recommendation as to what we're moving forward with the budget. And that's only for new money. If it's just existing values, we won't get into the minutia of what actually the board is doing with the money. It's just if you're wanting for an increase in the total amount, that's when we would just talk about that quantum of that change, not try and dictate what the board does with the money, just the total value of the money itself.
Thanks, Gary. And you should have as part of your package, obviously, the budget year to date by cost centers. Sue and I have had an opportunity to go through it, Sue and Pam and myself, just to quickly look at how that's being captured, how it's being spent, so that we have a better understanding of what those are for. And if you look at our, obviously, as Gary mentioned, the wages part is out of our hands, other than what's here on the board's per diems. But when you start looking at materials and supplies, our programming, our insurance, our memberships, We didn't budget anything for memberships this year. It was all to be captured under the programming line. So we're now trying to break that out a little bit. Obviously, our membership is part of the Inter-Association of Police Services Board, OAPSB. The insurance, and we've got an item on the agenda to talk about some enhanced insurance opportunities and whether that can reduce our costs in future years. But one of the things, and we have it on our agenda today to talk about, is, for example, the OAPSB conference or any training that members of the board have to undergo. You know, we don't have a cost line for that at the present time. So is there going to be a need, with us being a new board, to attend some training, to attend some conferences? And if so, what are those costs? And that would either be new money, or it would be money that we have reallocated because of reduced insurance. So, you know, what I was hoping to propose today is that we strike a bit of a subcommittee on this one, just with a couple of people working with Sue, recognizing the timelines that the CEO has mentioned, that we would have to have something by the end of June, because we don't meet in July and August. If we're going to meet again in June, then we would have to have a proposal put to this board by our June meeting to get approval to then send it to the county for consideration. Questions, comments? Member Carter?
So Gary, the 20,000, that doesn't appear here, right? You said that 20,000 for incidentals and so on?
I believe it does. I believe it was when we first, so the board is still currently working with the initial proposal that I put together with the creation of the board.
Right.
And so one thing, and as the chair just mentioned, we didn't contemplate a number of things in that. So I'm anticipating there will be an increased, and probably should be an increase to the budget for the board, the functionality of the board. Because we didn't memberships, we didn't include membership. We didn't talk about conferences and stuff like that in the initial piece. We just kind of gave a bucket of money, which was the $20,000, which was, I believe, it's in that number, correct, Sue?
I think it's 7,000 for per diems for
Yeah.
the board members, and then another 13,600 for materials and supplies.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other issue, and, you know, as further down in the agenda, there's a number of items talking about investigations and so on and so forth. So we do not have a line for legal fees here, and that was right from the beginning. That's been my biggest fear, as to, you know, us getting involved in whether it be an investigation or something like that, and we would need legal advice to do that. So unfortunately, that's a bit of an unknown. And so we may need to make a provision at least for that in next year's budget.
You're exactly right, Councillor. That's what we're anticipating, and I can work with Sue on building what I would call the foundational portions of the budget that should be part of the committee: insurance, training, and conferences. We can separate the staff training out. We have a centralized training program here, so any training in that education that Sue and Pam would take on, we'll cover that under our centralized training piece. So we'll just focus on the funding for the board itself. But one thing I would add, and this would be very helpful to me, and I like things that are very helpful to me, is that when you're looking at your special programming side of it, as to special initiatives, use this as just an example. I know this isn't a board initiative, but something like that. If you start thinking in a 3-year cycle, we are trying to transition into multi-year budgeting here at the county. So one of the directions I give our department heads is that when you start looking at these program aspects coming in the budget, that you're planning out on a 3 to 5 year period. So we know what we're looking at and start forecasting increases and impacts, financial impacts on a forecasted basis versus year to year. So when you're looking through your piece, I know it's short time frame for you, but if you start looking at a prioritization program as well as to on any of your strategic items that you can say, you know, this is 26, this is 27, that would really help us in working through as we manage those types of things over the next number of years. So, and this will be for the next term of council. I'm getting ahead of myself, but we start thinking that way. And I'm able to convince the new council to get into a multi-year budgeting program. Then once it's in the budget, all we're dealing with is adjustments after that. So you're not having to, it'll simplify your process and allow you to fiscally plan better. So I just put that in your ears here, go forward. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very helpful. And I know, we've had a conversation as a board about a strategic plan and what that would look like. and how that piggybacks, is there advertising costs related to that? So building that into our 3-year cycle, as you talked about, so when we anticipate that work would happen, what training is required, what legal costs might we incur, to your point, Member Carter. So I think those are all things we need to consider. We can go to the OAPSB and ask for their support for what other budgets might look like. But as I learned, and I'll speak to later, there's a lot of other boards in the same boat that we're in, that they're just putting a dart on the dartboard, picking a number and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I would add, and it's with the work that's been done, getting you guys up, and we're actually ahead of the curve on a lot of areas. So, I mean, good work done by the board and your staff in getting you there, because we may be small, but as Sue likes to say, we're small but mighty. And we are ahead of the curve on a lot of the organizational aspects for the board.
Any other questions of the CAO? Seeing none, again, thanks very much, Gary. What we'll undertake as a board is to, we can have some more discussion around moving forward, what that work looks like and who's going to do it. Again, I know Sue's going to carry the ball for the largest part, but I think she's going to need some board input on what we see as the priorities for the board in the next 3 to 5 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for fitting me in.
No problem. So again, we'll jump back into this. We can continue with 7.3 at this point in time if you'd like, and just go back to 7.1 and 7.2 in a moment. In your actual, I know Sue just had a bit of a breakdown of the cost for us prior to the meeting. I don't know if you want to speak to that, Sue, just as to the staff here and finance are trying to align things into different categories or buckets so that we can track it a little bit better. In our programming line, we haven't spent anything, but in the membership line, which we had 0 for, we now have spent $4,231.
Yep, so just that. So as you can see in this budget, 20,000, it's actually 20,600 has been allotted by County Council for the 2025 budget. That's largely comprised of per diems, insurance, membership fees, training incidentals, and we do have a miscellaneous line item that's not included here. Some of these year-to-date actuals will be updated for the next meeting, just to keep everybody up to date on what we've spent so far. I believe the amount left over that we have is a little over 3,500. So not a lot to work with throughout the rest of the year. But we can certainly work with that as we need to. So this is just a snapshot of the budget, and great help to the county's deputy treasurer for helping work through this.
Thanks, Sue. So just some of the items that I flagged for further discussion as to what we might need to look at is obviously legal, any travel costs, that the board may incur, whether they're, obviously if you're attending a meeting somewhere or traveling to that meeting, should the member absorb that cost themselves, or is there a mileage fee that the county has set aside for travel expenses, and should we be capturing that as part of the budget? Conferences and training, if we feel there's a value in doing the annual conference, whether that's one member and picking a different member each year to attend. But I think there would be some benefit to the board from that attendance at that conference. We have that. I'll get you those numbers based on what it was for this year. And then if we're looking at any advertising or strategic planning process stuff that might involve consultation with the community, whether we have to hire somebody to do that work for us, or if we're going to take it on ourselves, if we're looking for a survey, community survey, who's going to administer that, as there would be a cost to it. And then the last thing I had was just any other board materials that Sue or Pam or anybody else may incur at some point in time, whether that would be continue to be absorbed by the county's budget, or if they want that broken out. So, whether it's printing costs, whether it's computers or printer paper, that sort of stuff. So all things that I think we just need to break out a little bit and give some more thought to. And if any member of the board wants to work with Sue and I on it, please let me know. We're happy to take that. Any other questions on that one? While we're on that topic, there was group insurance, and you'll see it is included as part of your package. I'll just pass it over to Sue. I know you had received some material through the OAPSB.
So prior to the inaugural meeting of our detachment board, we did obtain insurance for the board at a cost of $5,670. This insurance expires later this year on October 1st. But since our sourcing of this insurance plan, the OAPSB, which is the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards, did make a group insurance plan available. The plan runs from September to September, and the annual fee is $3,600 plus 388 tax for a total of $3,988 annually. And so we do require to, the OAPSB does require a set number of boards to participate in the program, but many are. And they've asked just if there are other boards interested in joining this program to advise of their interest in doing so that they can plan for later this year. Should we be interested in joining the OAPSB group insurance plan, it is required the board has an abuse policy. Staff can develop this abuse policy and bring forward to the board for adoption at a future meeting, and the OAPSB does have a template available for that.
Thanks, Sue. Member Danielson and then Member Hodgson.
It looks, based on the prices that we're seeing here, that it's something that's definitely worthwhile us investigating. And I think, you know, if the board agrees, it's something that we should consider and do. I'm wondering with respect to the abuse policy, if there's anything that we have got within our existing policies that mirrors it or kind of helps lead us in that direction, or if it needs to be very specific.
I can review with county staff on that. There is a recommendation of consultation with any internal HR departments, but there is a template that's a great starting point that just to make sure that we're aligning with other detachment boards as well. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Thanks, Sue. You know, my recommendation would be, as you've mentioned, Member Danielson, it's going to save us about $1,600 if we were to move to this alternative insurance program, which is substantial, and particularly in future years. But you know, I think we can, hopefully before the June meeting, craft that abuse policy so that we can get the board's approval. And if we can't get it done by June, as long as we bring it back to the board by September, we can tell the OAPSB at this point in time of our intent to join their group insurance plan. And as long as we do that before our other insurance renews in October, we should be in good stead there. So it gives us about 3 months to work with on developing the policy and getting that in front of the board, and then with board's approval, we'll make the transfer over. Any questions on that, comments? All right. Just on the topic of budget, so, sorry. Yep. We can, or I can leave it as a package and make a motion to include that as part of the budget when we go forward. Member Carter?
I'd make the motion to go to this, particularly if you know, if it benefits, you know, they have to have a certain number of boards to be able to make this happen. So I think we should make the motion as quickly as possible so that we can help ourselves and help everybody else out.
I will support that. So I'm hearing a motion from Member Carter that we continue in conversation with the OAPSB to join their group insurance.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Member Danielson. Pam, did you catch that motion?
That was Member Carter, Member Danielson, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so moved by Member Carter and seconded by Member Danielson that the Haliburton Highlands OPP Detachment Board opt into the OAPSB group insurance in the fall.
Sounds good. All right. All in favor? Any against? None? Approved. Thank you. And then on the previous item on the budget, Sue and I will undertake to craft something before the next meeting and bring it back to the board for final approval to get it in front of council by, or in front of the county by their August deadline. Just on the topic of budget, again, everything we talked about today is the board's budget. And I know it's a concern of members of this board as to what that, beyond our own board budget, what's the budget for policing costs here in the Haliburton Highlands going forward. Under the new act, obviously it requires us under section 71(1) to prepare estimates and submit them to the municipalities. That's a board responsibility. And also under section 18, we can look at any extra policing costs if we feel there's a need for extra policing costs for special events or things like that, to bring those forward to the municipalities. It talks about in the act everything around the budget focusing from your local action plan, which we have yet to create, and that falls under the detachment commander's responsibility to prepare the local action plan. Our intent is when we get our new detachment commander, we will sit down and see what that plan looks like, and then see if there's some costs that are associated with it. What I have been able to source out is, just for the benefit of the board, is the budgets for the OPP are basically set by government as part of their multi-year economic or fiscal plan. They develop it, their finance folks develop it. It's then voted on in legislature, and it's based on their anticipated expenditures and their anticipated revenues, particularly as it relates to the OPP. It's part of that provincial budget. The municipalities contribute one of two ways, and one is through the base costs, or what they call routine costs, that are preset by the OPP, and that's the shared costs around every municipality. And then the second or equal the breakdown of individual distribution based on calls for service, and the Municipal Policing Bureau sets those costs for us. So I reached out to our detachment commander again, because this is all still very new to me. And with a municipal policing board, the police board is entirely responsible for receiving the budget from their staff, approving it as a board, and then sending it to council for payment. That's different with the OPP board, in that the budget is set by the OPP, by government, and we're trying to figure out what role we play in that. So Mike has been gracious enough to arrange for Sergeant Lisa Roeder, who is the supervisor in charge of the Municipal Policing Bureau and the expert on everything to do with municipal policing budgets. We're hoping to get her to attend a future meeting, hopefully in June if it works out, and she'll go through some of the helping us understand what the board's responsibilities are, how we have input. It talks about in the legislation stakeholder input, but it's not clear as to what that stakeholder input looks like, and how we contribute to that. So again, thanks to Mike for setting that up for us, and if it's at the wish of the board, we'll move that forward for June, to have somebody appear before us and give us that understanding and breakdown, and a bit of a lesson in what the budgets look like. And then we'll have a better understanding ourselves as to how we put our feet or toes into that pool. People okay with that approach? All right. All right. Try and get back to my agenda here. So I don't think, Pam, we need a further motion, because it's just more work to be done on the budget process. So we'll resort back to 7.1, and I'll try and get this one done quickly for you. The OAPSB conference. We did discuss this at previous meetings. The conference this year for the OAPSB is on June 3rd to 5th in London. There was a deadline for applications for your registration. We've passed that deadline because of just the timing of the emergency and the timing of not having a board meeting. So I elected not to pursue attending the conference this year. We got a lot of other things on our plate, and I think until we get a better understanding of what we need to do locally, my time is better spent here. So just for the benefit of the board, that there are some significant costs to send people to the conference. You're looking at $190 or $170 a night for a hotel for a couple of nights. There's a registration fee of depending on whether you go daily or if you go for the entire conference. So those are things that we'll have to, I think, undertake to discuss further for next year. But one thing that did come out of that discussion with Sue is the need for, if we are going to send somebody to a conference like the OAPSB conference, what's the overall benefit to the board, and to have that person then report back to the board on what was, the things that they, conference sessions they attended while they're at the conference, what they learned, what the benefit is, and bring that back. And so you'll see in your package that Sue has prepared a post-conference attendance report template, which was a good starting point for us, that, we can use that as a template for the board. If any member is going to attend a training session or a conference on behalf of the board, and the board's paying your way, the return on investment is that we ask you to fill out one of these reports and speak to that at the next meeting of the board. So I don't know if we need a motion to accept that template, or it's just part of our ongoing business. Next up is our 7.2, our Zone 3 meeting. I had the opportunity to join that meeting on March 27th. It was a virtual meeting. There was a number of lots of good business that came out of it. You'll see in the material in your package, there was a PowerPoint presentation by the Intensive Serious Violent Crime Bail Team, a Crown attorney that Paul Murray out of Peterborough gave us a really good understanding of. There's been a lot of talk in the province around catch and release, and why isn't our Crown attorneys doing more to keep people in jail, and the bail review process. He explained to the members the primary and the secondary and the tertiary grounds and all the rest of the stuff that they're required to follow under the law, the amendments to the code, all kinds of other good stuff. We can, and he will be sharing that presentation with us. It's going to be sent to the OAPSB, and I can share it with the board if people desire. But this intensive serious violent crime bail team has been created by Ministry of the Attorney General to address the more violent crimes that are occurring, whether domestic violence, whether they're intimate partner violence, anything to do with firearms, anything to do with repeat offenders. And so they're now trying to have some consistency across the province as to what that bail process looks like for those individuals. So stay tuned for more information on that. They also had a presentation by Graham White, who had already spoke to this group at our last meeting, and it was a lot of the same material that was provided. You'll see that what he did share at the end of the presentation, and it's in your correspondence and communication at the end of the meeting, is that they're working on a strategic plan for the inspectorate. They're looking at data collection for the inspectorate, and they're looking at their very first inspection that they're going to be doing is the public order units around the province. They're going to be inspecting compliance with legislation on that one. And then the real meat and potatoes of the meeting came from the Executive Director, Lisa Darling. She spoke about the training plan that they're developing. She talked about the diversity, equity, and inclusion plan that they're working with various municipalities to try and implement those for boards. A couple of projects that are underway for 2025 is their webinar series that they're going to be pushing out in 2026. Some recruitment initiatives for board members, particularly the areas that don't have established boards. They're looking at a WSIB white paper that they're going to be circulating to the boards on some issues that they've being faced by police services around the province around WSIB. And then they're also working on the labor relations information system to try and track contracts around the province, to track collective agreements, so that they can share that across the board with boards, so they have some understanding, more so from the municipal board's perspective when they go into bargaining, that they're not bargaining against each other, and they have some information about labor relations around the province. And as I mentioned previously, I think that was what really struck me as coming out of that meeting was that we are moving along at the normal pace. We're actually ahead of some boards. There's some boards that haven't even got full membership yet. There's some that don't have policies, don't have procedures, don't have anything. They're really scrambling. The OAPSB is they're working on a couple of things that they're going to share with us. One is the detachment commander evaluation process. So it's in the legislation that we are responsible for doing the assessment of the evaluation of the detachment commander. But what that looks like, the format, the template, things like that. We don't really know. So they're trying to develop something along with the OPP on that. That was supposed to be, the first draft of that was expected to be released April 14th. It was going to go to the detachment commanders and then go back to the OPP and their working group to then build that out. So hopefully we'll see something in the months ahead. And the other big piece is that the OAPSB is looking to provide as many templates as they can specific to OPP boards. The municipal boards have lots of examples of policies and procedures. They have policies about their policies, but they're not very specific to OPP boards. So they're trying to create some templates for us. And I know that Sue's been joining in the information sessions that they host each couple of weeks, and grabbing what we can. So we'll continue to get the board up to date on that. You will have seen, I think Sue sent out an email to everybody about the importance of participating in these Zoom meetings when we can. We just have to be careful not to have the entire board participate, because then that would constitute quorum, and that would then be a meeting for us. So if there's people that are truly interested, I don't mind attending them. They're good information sessions to get us up to speed, and I don't mind sharing with the board afterwards. We've already addressed 7.3, 7.4, board policies. This is one that's going to require a bit of work, folks. The OAPSB shared with us OPP Detachment Board Startup Checklist. It is multi-pages, and encouraged by the fact that we've addressed a number of them. We've already addressed the recruiting and appointing of members, training and orientation. However, there's a section on operational guidelines that recommends that we develop a process for detachment commander feedback, for recruitment and evaluation. So that's being undertaken by the OAPSB, as I mentioned. But then there's a whole section on other policies that they've recommended, and I think it was shared with the board, but the list is quite extensive of ones that they're encouraging, like terms of reference, local action plan, finance policy, accessibility, donations, sponsorship, legal indemnification, all kinds of policies that we should have. So what I would ask is that if there's a member or two that would like to work with us on this, I think it's something worthy of a subcommittee to work with Sue and Pam and myself. If people want to start, we'll undertake to get these drafts, and we can do it as an entire board. But sometimes it's easier with a smaller committee just to review them, provide some feedback, and then present them to the board. So if you're keen on working on policies, let me know, and we will strike a bit of a subcommittee on that. Member Danielson?
I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be appropriate for the board as a whole to look at the list and decide which of the lists we think are most appropriate to start with, and then for a subcommittee to work on establishing each one of those.
Yep. So I don't know if this list was the recommended policies was already shared with you, but if it's not, I will undertake to share that with you after today's meeting, and then we can, before maybe at our June meeting, prioritize that list. Member Carter?
Yeah, this is always very difficult. And now, because this police detachment board is I don't know, a legal entity, and it is involved in all sorts of rules, it gets very easy to get bogged down in all of these policies and procedures. Now, the one that really jumps out to me is, for instance, community safety and well-being. So I'm the county designate on that board, so I'm on that board there. The OPP is also on that board, and yet, then we're both sitting here and determining how this board should relate to the community safety and well-being. I mean, we just get into this circle of confusion. So I think it's it would be nice for us to have as few of these policies and procedures as possible, so that we can do our job and remain effective without getting bogged down in all sorts of confusion.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. There are, on the list of the ones that they provided, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 of them, and one of them is community safety and well-being and the board's involvement in that process. So that's the ones that they've singled out so far is the 15 of what they consider the top priority. But we can definitely work on, one of them, for example, is the hiring of the detachment commander. Well, we don't have a policy on that, but we just went through that procedure and we had an opportunity to participate and follow the legislation. So whether we need a separate policy on that, if it's already captured in legislation, it's pretty clear as to what we're supposed to do. But there's a need for a policy on records management. Where do we store our records? How do we store them? How are they kept? So on and so forth. So there's probably some key ones that we're going to need to get going on sooner than later, but other ones, I agree with you, Member Carter. We don't need a policy for the sake of needing a policy sometimes. Well, if there's anybody else that I'll send that list out after the meeting today, and then we can look at which policies we want to start doing some work on and the timing of that. Next up is strategic plan. We've been keeping this on our agenda only because it's something that goes along with our local action plan and the next steps of what we should be doing. I did note there was the OPP just did a community satisfaction survey that was posted provincially. I'm going to see if I can get our hands on that one so we can look at some of the results provincially, if they help guide sort of what they feel that should be priorities. I'm still, the act talks about the minister's strategic plan, and I'm still having a hard time getting my hands on what that minister's strategic plan is. Under the act, it says that, objectives, priorities, and core functions, quantitative and qualitative performance measures, interaction with youth, racialized groups, First Nations, people with mental illness. There's supposed to be resource planning. There's supposed to be a facilities part of that. So it'd be good, I think, for us to see that before we get too far down the next rabbit hole on our own strategic plan. But I haven't been able to, nobody at the ministry seems to be able to know what that strategic plan, where it is or what stage it's at. So Mike, I don't know if you have seen anything.
I have not. I've asked the commissioner on this because recently it changed with the CSPA. Normally, the commissioner would be the one to develop the strategic plan for the OPP. But since the new act, that has gone back to the government to complete.
So it's now in the hands of the minister, and it says, in fact, the first thing up is that says how the commissioner ensures adequate and effective policing is the first thing the minister is supposed to determine for the commissioner. So
Which minister?
Minister of the Solicitor General, I believe. Yeah, it's all Jen. So we'll continue to work on this one and try and, I think when our new detachment commander arrives, we'll try and look at what the local action plan should be based on what maybe she's been told as far as that minister's strategic plan. But my own personal view is that we can't just keep treading water on this one. We need to do something and get a local action plan up that maybe speaks to the needs of this community, even if it doesn't align with the minister's plan at this point, because there is no minister's plan as far as we can see. To go along with that is the annual report. So under, I guess, section 68. So under section 58, the OPP commissioner has to do an annual report to the ministry. And then on top of that, under section 68 of the act, the board has to do an annual report to local council as to our actions for the past year. What that looks like, we're working with the OAPSB to see if they have some template that we can follow. I have been asked to attend a county council meeting on June 11th, just to update them on our detachment commander process and a few other things, because there have been some questions by council, whether that's going to be the same time that I do our annual report, or that might get pushed off to a later time. But according to the act, we're supposed to, it says, doesn't really say when, just the time, it just says it has to be an annual report. So I'm anticipating end of year, although the government works on a fiscal year different than the annual year. So maybe it's next March. We'll continue to work on those pieces to make sure the board's annual report lands in the hands of council. Just looking at the time, I know we've been at it for an hour and a half. You want a quick 10-minute bio break, and then we'll come back and move on with the detachment commander's update and then the other topics of discussion. So we'll adjourn until 2:40. All right, we're back. So reconvene at 2:49. And we're at section 8 of our agenda. The only 8.1, the only item I have for you for chair update, and I did share this by way of our email, is obviously our new detachment commander that's going to be starting with us on June 2nd, and I'll update the board in camera on how that process fell out and the work that was involved. Before I leave this, I just wanted to again thank Mike for everything you've done for us. I know we're a fairly new board, but you've really helped guide us, and I want to wish you all the best in your new assignment. And we were sad to see you go because we had a very engaged detachment commander, but I know you'll serve Northumberland County just as well as you served us here. So thanks again.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And the only other item I have, we received from the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police. There's a new training video out on Ontario's Blind Persons Rights Act. And I can share that with the board if anybody's interested. Reach out to me, but there's a new act that speaks to blind persons' rights, and talks about how it's an offense to deny guide dog handlers access to certain things, whether accommodations, services, things like that. But they've now created a training video that's going to go out to all police services across the province, and it was shared with boards as well if we wanted to participate in it. So let me know and I can send that on to you if you're interested. And other than that, I have no other updates from the chair. I'll do need a motion to accept the chair's report. Member Hodgson, seconded by Member Chevadukas. Wait for Pam to read it back.
Moved by Member Hodgson and seconded by Member Chevadukas that the chair update be received.
All in favor? Approved. Thank you. We will now turn it over to our detachment commander, or the outgoing detachment commander, who was supposed to do this report back in April. Mike, fire away.
That's the one. That's great.
Over to you, Mike.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. We begin the report. I'll have to just preface this by it's the first 2 months of the year, January and February of 2025. As the chair stated, this obviously the meeting was supposed to take place in April, but there was a number of things going on in the township of Minden Hills that prevented us from engaging. So that's why there's only 2 months we're reporting on. But as you can see, the traffic collisions, we had a good start to 2025. No fatal accidents during the first 2 months of the year. Our non-fatal injury accidents are down 71%, and our property damage collisions are down 35.6%, with 58 being reported. Overall, 62 reported accidents, down 40.4%. That's good. Yeah, just the next page is just a breakdown of the accidents. Sure. It's just a breakdown of the fatal accidents. We didn't have any during the reporting period. So we're good in that. If we carry on to the criminal code and provincial statute charges laid page, there we go. Criminal code and provincial statutes charge sections, we see an increase supported by our traffic engagement. Our criminal code charges, non-traffic, were 125 for January and February. Our criminal code traffic impaireds, we had 7 for the reporting period. Our HCA charges, Highway Traffic Act, up significantly by 37% to 366 for the first 2 months of the year. And we saw 3 Liquor License Act offenses and 72 other violations for the first 2 months. So an increase of 6.9%, 573 for the 2 months. Yes.
The HCA charges,
What were they mostly involved with, what infraction?
So mostly the big four, specifically speeding. That's the largest offense in the area. Considering the amount of snow we had, we still had a number of engagements, traffic engagements by the officers. I will say that I did see an offense notice written by one of our members, and I've never seen it before. And I believe the offense was snow grooming machine improper lighting. A snow grooming machine with improper lights. Never seen that before. So, yeah. So,
Okay.
there in the trail.
Thank you.
Something. So that was good. Our traffic related charges, like I said, we're looking well for the first 2 months. 270. So speeding offenses were up 51.7% from 2024. There are 2 seatbelt tickets, 4 impaired charges, 4 distracted driving charges. So the big 4. Our e-ticket warnings on the next page are down 24% to 122. What this does, it shows discretion on the part of the members. At the same time, there's engagement. So they're out of their vehicles engaging with the people at the roadside just to further educate them on trying to keep them safe on the roadway. So it's not always about enforcement. It's about getting out there, meeting the people in the communities and educating them on certain things. Personally, I would say, like, I would give warnings. Like, we can track these now where we couldn't before with the e-ticketing. So you can issue a paper warning. It says warning on it. A lot of administrative warnings given. So if your permit's not signed, if you don't have your insurance slip up to date, that sort of thing. And I've been doing this, and I've been discouraging members from doing, giving warnings for, serious offenses like not wearing a seatbelt or distracted driving or speeding. So these are the type of warnings that are being issued by the members. And you don't want to like triple tap somebody with a ticket either. So, but it's all discretion for the members. Our violent crime category, we had 4 sexual offenses reported in January and February, up from last year at the same time. Each of the incidents, the accused is known to the victim, and they're not serial in nature. So isolated incidents where the accused is known. There's an increase in the assault firearm related offenses, 18 reported. I dug into this a little bit, and it's a direct result of investigations conducted by our community street crime unit with 2 successful warrant executions. We had 4 incidents involving violence, threats of violence, with 26 reported violent incidents for January and February, a 44% increase from the same time last year. The next page is the property crime group. In the category, we saw 4 break-and enters. I looked at those. One was stolen frozen food from a deep freeze in a garage that somebody slipped through a window and cleared out a deceased person's freezer. One was a store in Highlands East where the male was arrested inside the premises. One was intimate partner violence related, and the other was a drug related break and enter. In that particular case, the person broke into the home and simply left handwritten notes inside. So still an offense. Nothing taken at that in that circumstance. So very unusual break and enters in the first part of 2025 in Haliburton County. We had 2 theft over occurrences, 6 theft under incidents, 9 frauds reported, and 4 mischiefs. And we are down 46.8% during the same reporting period last year. Our drug crime. So we had 3 drug offenses. They were all possession. One was a CS Community Street Crime Unit investigation, and the others were street investigations by frontline members. The interesting part about the possession charges is that they're pretty serious drugs. GHB, is anyone familiar with that? Obviously the chair. It's, I don't know if I can pronounce it correctly, gamma hydroxybutyrate. It's a liquid. Some people use it as a date rape drug. I've known bodybuilders who are cycling steroids to take it to help them sleep to recover as well. And the other charges were related to cocaine and methamphetamine, which is very serious to be in this community. Our top 5 violation groups are listed. Assaults, typically you would see at the top. Frauds are still prevalent. However, we do see a decrease thanks to education to the at-risk groups. Theft, unders, failure to comply, and provincial statute charges. Our other crime category, we had a slight increase of 3 incidents to 19. 4 provincial statutes and 6 driving offenses. The category has had a 16% increase to 29 incidents from last year. We're moving on to clearance rates. For the first 2 months of the year, our clearance rate for violent crimes is 80.8%. Now that is expected to increase as investigations continue, and wrapped up charges would make those complete at that time after they're wrapped up. And typically we saw that same at the end of last year, where the violent crime clearance rate increased once those investigations were completed. Property crime clearance is at 20%, which is down slightly from the same time in 2024. Our other crime category is clearance is higher at 84.2%. Our drug crime cleared at 100%, along with our provincial statutes and driving offenses at 83.3% for the driving offenses. In the unfounded category, we had a total of 6 unfounded occurrences in January and February. These are calls for service where a criminal act was alleged, and through investigation it was determined that no criminality occurred. So still sometimes a lot of work in those categories, but oftentimes it's flushed out when the officer investigates correctly. So far in 2025, there have been no public complaints lodged by the LECA, the Law Enforcement Complaint Agency. We had 1 internal complaint submitted at detachment, and the investigation determined those allegations to be unsubstantiated. So that's very positive. And it keeps us, transparent in that we're doing a good job. Even though, there might be some concern in the allegations, it cleared at the end of it. Our DAR reporting, daily activity reporting, shows 1,372.5 hours of cruiser patrol, 1.5 hours only on the sleds, 52.25 hours foot patrol, and 1.75 hours working inside the schools. We carry on to youth charges. During the reporting period, we had 4 youth-related incidents involving mental health, which met the requirements for youth diversion. So we didn't send them to courts. They had additional external measures to assist those youth in the community. And we go on to mental health occurrences. Our mental health calls for service were up from 2024. We had 29 at the beginning of the year, with the majority of those being straight mental health calls. Just people in the community looking for help. And again, for overdoses, we had none reported to the police, not saying that they didn't occur in the community, but usually when these occur, they don't want to call the cops. So we weren't notified. Unless, of course, it was a death, and we'd be engaged. Our referrals to victim services continues to increase year over year. So far, we're up 43.3%, with 88 offered and 39 accepted in the community. And that is the conclusion of the commander's report.
Thanks very much, Mike. Any questions from members of the board? Member Hodgson?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And again, congratulations on your moving forward. I'm sure it'll be successful. Your officers have had some pretty challenging for Haliburton, major issues in the last couple of months. Congratulations to how they handled it. I can say that from the public's point of view, and as folks get to know our membership a little better, the drug busts are certainly what the public want to see more of. So when you're doing them, don't keep them a secret. That's in the newspapers. People want to see the action, but you've had some pretty tough situations. So congratulations to all.
Thank you, Mr. Hodgson.
Member McKechnie?
Yes, you said something about patrol at the schools. What was that? What the time was? Did you say 1.7? Did I?
Yeah, so 1 hour, 45 minutes with school patrol in the schools. And I believe that event was attended by the cadet who presented at, I believe, the high school in Haliburton.
So, I'm not trying to tell you guys how to run your job, but do you think it'd be more beneficial to the kids there if you were at the school more often and maybe even answering some questions? Or yeah, like I say, I'm sure you've done this before, but I just think that that's where our youth really needs some help today, is respecting every process of the law, and of course, everything to do with life today.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's better to have that face-to-face engagement in the schools directly with the police officers. Keeping in mind that was only for January and February. We did have an event that took place at the high school in Haliburton in April, and that was attended by our Uniform Recruitment Bureau and members from the detachment. The other side of that is the schools are slowly getting back to having us come in. There was a point where the school board didn't want us there, or a limited amount. And that is slowly, we're working with them to see where their tolerance is, to see how much they want us in there. So that is improving.
That's great. I appreciate that. And also, I know the Main Street of Haliburton and our whole community there, our wonderful park, and that we'd love to see the officers out walking around or even walking in the stores. I think it's just great to see you guys out and about. I know when they are, people comment about it, So I think it's great presence, and I know you have to spend so much more time doing other things, but boy, that'd be a great routine to get into. Again, where you spent more time on out of the cars and on our little village.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you get so much benefit. Personally, I got benefit when I was doing foot patrol.
Yeah.
Maybe not during, black fly season, but
Yeah. Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep. Sorry.
Just a quick question. I can't understand why the school boards would not want you there.
it's a great question.
So
Or not.
sadly, Member Dennison, this has been ongoing for about the last, I'm going to say three, if not 4 years. And it came down to, there was a number of high school liaison programs, there was school resource officer programs, and there was a group of students complained to numerous sources over the years that it was making them feel unsafe to have police officers in their school, that they felt bullied. They were, so some services tried different uniforms so they wouldn't feel threatened by the uniform. Some tried private security. A number of school boards, as recent as 2 years ago, came out and actually banned the police. I think Toronto was one of them. I know some of the other jurisdictions where they banned the police and canceled those school programs. Thankfully, we're starting to see the tide turning, and this is not just in Ontario, this has been right across Canada. That now they're starting to see the value of youth engagement, and one way to do that is to be in the schools so that they don't feel fearful every time they see a police officer. So
Sorry.
so hopefully we're going to see that tide turn back to school resource officer programs getting back into the schools and building those relationships.
This didn't make sense to me.
Member Carter?
Imagine being bullied into following the law. Yeah. A couple of things. First of all, I wanted to thank Mike and the whole detachment, the OPP presence through the state of emergency that we had and the interaction, availability, and the fact that you guys were working together with us right from the beginning, attending all the meetings and so on was, I think, incredibly important for us to be able to get through all we went through, including having no radios or no phones or no communication or 911. Thank you, and to all the detachment. The next thing was, I noted in the report here you had I think on the youth report, you were talking about the mental illness and the fact that there was diversion. I think I would like to see, particularly, when we talk about community safety and well-being, is now that you have people assigned to that mental health file. What are the total numbers of diversion, not only in youth, but also in other cases that you have? Because I have a notion, people during the federal campaign were complaining about, oh, the jail in Lindsay is supposed to only have so many people, and there's 3 people per cell, and so on. And I understand. I asked the question about, what number of those people in the Lindsay jail are there for mental illness as opposed to criminal activity. And I asked that of the OPP and found out that when you guys were asking, that those statistics aren't available. And, I think that that's something that we should be, pressing the government on, because, if we're filling our jails with people who are mentally ill and not, that's the mental illness file was sort of something that just became an additional job for the OPP and all police forces. And the second part is that's not the way to be, dealing with it. Like, there should be this diversion, like you said, of criminal versus mental health issues, and that would be nice.
Yeah, I agree completely. I'll address 2 things. Through the chair, if the board wishes, that I could have it arranged that the MCERT data be provided on the breakdown of how they're doing quarterly or on each report. And then further to the comment about mental health in jails, I have firsthand experience with this. I was 10 years in a jail. I worked in detention, the Hamilton Wentworth Detention Center, and then to the federal system with Warkworth Institution and Kingston Penitentiary. So I would say definitively, there's a lot of acute mental health cases that come in to the detention centers. They're charged with criminal offenses, and they're brought in. I guess the term would be, I want to say acute, but in crisis, right? Until they get stabilized through medication and through treatment. And then as they proceed through the court system, some continue with their mental health, and others move on to custodial sentences. But you're absolutely right. A large proportion of the inmates do have mental health within their history. So,
and if I can, Mike, I think that we're really talking 2 types of diversion, right? Remember, Carter, we're talking the mental health diversion court, which, those are the ones that commit a criminal offense, but may be doing so because of some mental health issues. And there's now ways to have them diverted into other channels. But it's also that MCERT team that we're talking about, the crisis response team, and how they divert people rather than going to a criminal process to get the mental health care they need. And oftentimes that's pre-crisis versus, in crisis, right? So I think if we can start to get that MCERT report with some of those details, Mike, that would be something that would be, I think, a great benefit to the board to see how many of those cases, I know you talked about the overdoses as being there was none reported, only 2. That to me is a good sign, because that means people, if they are overdosing, are getting the right help they need. Don't call the police if you've overdosed. Call the medical professionals. That's who's going to help them in that crisis.
absolutely.
I think the important thing is that we're not gathering any of the statistics on the mental health, because the police end up having to clean it up. And, these people are just in in this report we just read, you know, and we have no idea that, hey, this could have been handled in a different way. And the fact that we don't have enough mental health workers and so on in the system is, you know, you can't make that argument because nobody sees the number.
Yeah, there's no data, no evidence collected.
Yeah, and I would say that the struggle for this community is the resources. So the bulk of the resources are further south in the city of Kawartha Lakes, and our job is to link people with those resources. So
Absolutely. Any other questions of Mike on his report? Seeing none? Great, thank you.
would you like me to continue with calls
Yep, I
for
was
service?
just going to say, if you want to do the breakdown, the financial piece or the calls for service reporting,
For sure.
if Pam can pull that next report up. There we go.
And through you, Mr. Chair. We'll begin with the violent crime category. We have an increase of 8 calls in the violent crime category. This translates to 123.2 hours greater than we had last year. And not any particular category was significant, just overall, just a general increase in there. Moving on to property crime violations. This category, we had 28 fewer calls, which is a saving of 176.4 billable hours. In the other criminal code violations category, we see an increase of 1 call, which is 7.3 hours added to the overall total. And that increase, we see increases in public mischief, mislead police officers, and just serving the peace. In the drug possession, lower numbers this year over last in the drug possession category. The concerning part is, like I said earlier, is the type of drug: cocaine, methamphetamine, and GHB. Hard drugs in this community, a total of 4 incidents with a savings from last year of 20.7 hours. In the drugs category, no trafficking occurrences scored, which is a large savings from last year of 322.4 hours. Of note, this is the highest weighted category, which is consistent with the heavy resource allocation to investigate trafficking incidents. The statutes and acts, there are some increases in mental health and trespass of property for a total of 53, an increase of 52.5 billable hours. The trespass could be related to Algonquin Highlands. There were some calls for service on a particular road up there. I would say that's attributed to. In the operational category, our largest category, we have a slight contraction in this category, 194 incidents with savings of 117.8 billable hours. The operational 2, so our savings from the operational category quickly dissolve in operational 2, where false alarm seems to have increased sharply for the first 2 months of the year, 95 incidents with an increase of 54 billable hours. Traffic, as reported in the commander's report, our collisions are down 93 in 2024, 79 for 2025, with a savings of 53.2 hours. So we're not that far off from 2024, with only 24 fewer reportable calls and a savings of so far this year of 453.5 billable hours. And that concludes the billing summary report. Barring any questions.
Thanks, Mike. I just have one, and you touched on it very quickly. The false alarms. Any explanation to that you could see, or does the OPP have a response policy around false alarms? If stop the response if there's so many false alarms, or I'm just thinking, are some of these properties, I'm just wondering, seasonal properties and there's an alarm and there's nobody there? And
that's precisely the issue. These some of these seasonal homes are quite beautiful and they're alarmed up. We do make it a response because typically these areas are vacant and prone to break and enters. But yeah, we continue to respond as per normal. So
yep, it's a tough call, right? Because it's a 2-person response every time and fairly resource intensive.
Yeah.
Member Carter?
One thing on that too, I think part of it is also the the whole response system and the 911 system. You know, we've had one recently where it was, you know, the calls came through, they ended up dispatching fire. You know,
Oh,
it was basically somebody's security alarm going off, and, you know, our fire department doesn't do a lot with that. But, you know, and I think it came down to dispatch determining, was it EMS, was it police, or was it fire? So I think that, you know, there's still some work to be done with our dispatch systems.
yeah. We don't want to go to tiered response with everyone going for every alarm. So
And a lot of these are out of a call response center, right? Like a alarm monitoring center, and they try and contact the key holders. If they can't, then the next call is to who they think is the right emergency responder. Don't always get it right.
that's good. I did have sorry, I didn't.
Yep. Go ahead.
A small PowerPoint just to highlight some of the social media posts that we had for the county during the reporting period.
Yeah, absolutely. If Pam has that.
See how Pam makes out.
She's a pro at this now.
Yeah, that's right. So we had Rob Adams, constable of the detachment, trained up in media. We also brought along our cadet, Victoria Preddy. I think I've mentioned this before. Rob isn't very savvy with social media, so our cadet, Victoria Preddy, she's the one behind all the Instagram and Facebook posts. So, and it's important because I think it's good to, you know, sort of send the message out into the area that, you know, we're out there, we're active, and we're sort of promoting the good work of the people of the detachment. We like to advise when we have impaired charges, inclement weather during the snowstorm recently. Keep her going. Any new arrests, if we have, you know, a more serious charge, if there's a bail being held, we get a lot of feedback on the speed enforcement when we get the pictures with the speed of the vehicle with the vehicle in the picture. I'll tell you, this is PC Trevor Peacock, and he is responsible for a lot of the increase in Highway Traffic Act enforcement for us. He loves getting out there in getting these pictures done. Mark Jones, the auxiliary, 10 years service at the Haliburton Highlands Detachment. So he received a reward in January. He actually took a snowmobile course recently over in Bracebridge, and he had a great time with that. So he's going to be an active member out on the trails this coming season. The recruitment event, that is our cadet, Victoria Preddy, and PC Ali Hare. I forget the location that they were at, but they received some good feedback. Pardon me?
Haliburton Legion.
Was it the Legion? Okay. So they're both working today. They did a great job, and they like getting out and getting in front of people. So, and Victoria's the one responsible for all of these social media posts. I think we have some more. We were out on the trails. I think this is in Lachlan where they're doing speed enforcement along the trail. And obviously these are the different types of graphics that we're promoting the work that we're doing. Again, on the trails, on side roads doing ride. I think ride is a good engagement tool similar to foot patrol, because you're out, you're getting face-to-face contact with the community, and it's serving a purpose too. So we're trying to discourage drinking and driving. The next slide, I believe that the picture on the left is from Dysart. It was a warrant that was executed by the Community Street Crime Unit on Maple Avenue, and those were some of the firearms that were seized. I'll start with the one on the left. That's slow down, move over. So that image was taken off the in-car camera system on the cruiser. That violator didn't follow the law and get out of the lane for the officer, who you can see pointing in the top left of the corner. And that evidence is supplied to court. So it certainly helps take time away from court, because that's shown to the prosecutor and the defense, and usually winds up making a plea at that time. Another warrant on the right by the Community Street Crime Unit, again in Dysart. So if you can see the type of weaponry that was seized at this residence, I believe that was it was downtown Haliburton. I forget the name of the street. It was above one of the store locations. It was a serious weapon. The True Team came and executed the warrant. If you look at the very right, you see those bottles with the silver lids and the pink. That's GHB that they had. The packages of Lux are cannabis gummies. I believe there were 300 milligrams, so they're quite high. And you had cocaine and methamphetamine seized, as well as a number of rounds of ammunition and cash. So they've done some great work up here this year so far. I didn't expect something like that to occur in Haliburton, but it's sort of everywhere in these communities, right? So just a lot of resources. So to get this began in the fall, and it would have been scored back on the billing last year. So that's why it wasn't on the statement this year. So, but it was a great investigation. She's done a great job. DC, Kristen Allenson. So she's a hard worker. I think that's it. Yeah. Any questions?
That's great. Thanks very much, Mike. I know Cadet is not very outgoing at all either. She's very quiet and reserved.
Yeah.
If you have a chance to go for your tour, Andrew, I'm sure you'll have a chance to meet her, because she'll be one of the first people to come up and introduce herself. Great
She's
future,
great.
lots of potential there. But no, appreciate the visual and appreciate the work that's going on as far as social media stuff. I think it is a way that's just enhancing that community engagement. So well done. Thank you. I need a motion to accept the commander's report. Member Carter, followed second by Member McKechnie.
Moved by Member Carter, seconded by Member McKechnie, that the detachment commander update be received.
All in favor? Approved. Thank you. All right, and we'll next move to communication and correspondence. Typically, we receive a number of pieces of correspondence. Anything that comes from the OAPSB or the inspector to policing, we try to include in your package. Sue receives those and we pass them along. We have now developed, through Pam's help, a correspondence report, which you'll see as 9.1. If we receive correspondence from members of the public, we try and add it as a correspondence report. Some of them require action, some of them do not. I'm just going to ask that 9.1 be pulled for some discussion. I just want to update the board on an ongoing dialogue with a representative from the Archie Stouffer School. And the other items, unless there's anything else that needs to be pulled, we can receive a motion to receive the other items in 9.2. Member Chevadukas, Member Burton. That'll be Pam to receive items 9.2 and 9.3 of the agenda.
Moved by Member Chevadukas and seconded by Member Burton, that the correspondence from the OAPSB and the Inspectorate of Policing be received.
All in favor? Approved. Thank you. So under 9.1, there was two pieces of correspondence I believe they're referred to in there, but the one that I just want to bring out to the board's attention was on February 28th. We received an email from Robin Delane. She's a member of the school council for Archie Stouffer School. They had a meeting on the 28th of February, or the night before, and there was a concern raised by one of the parents about cars running school bus stop signs. And that was on County Road 121. In the email, it quote says, "Through discussion at our meeting, I'm writing in hopes that the police policing board, the OPP, the bus lines, the school council could work together to pilot a project to have dash cameras installed on the bus stop signs within Haliburton County, much like has been done in city of Kawartha Lakes. And she's attached the articles about the initiative that took place in Kawartha Lakes. The reason why I included this as correspondence is one, to make the board aware of it, but to also ask for your authority for me to respond to Ms. Delane. This is not a police board matter. This is a detachment matter and a commander matter. Again, school safety and school bus safety is paramount, and they've tried to change the legislation to now have the flashing amber lights before they go to flashing red lights. A number of communities are now trying these camera systems, which when the stop arm comes out, the camera comes out with it, and it actually picks up license plates as vehicles violate that stop arm. The reason why I'm reluctant to get the board involved in it, there is costs associated with the bus lines. It's not legislated that they have to do it. If they choose to do it, there is, so again, depending on the size of your bus line and how much you can afford and who's going to pay for it, whether it's done through grant programs or other safety initiatives. But what I'd like to be able to respond to Ms. Delane is that although the board is supportive of any safety issue, this is not something we can direct the detachment commander to have his people go out or direct the school bus lines to install these cameras. Obviously, if they'd like to, that would be great, and we'll encourage them to talk to our detachment commander. So, Member Carton.
Yeah, I think the school board is really the one that carries this on. I mean, the OPP would respond if there was, if there was evidence that was launched by the school board. But I think this is totally on the school board. I know that we had the issue with they changed the rules on who they were going to pick up earlier in the year, and both the OPP and us tried to go to the provincial government, whatever, and this was totally the school board decisions. And so the school boards are in charge of busing, and I think they're the ones that have to carry the ball on this one.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's why I think it just needs to, although we can say we're supportive of safety initiatives, which I think the board is, we can't direct our OPP detachment to take on certain activities. And it's, to your point, the school board, even then, I'm not so sure they can direct the bus line to do something if they, if they're contracted. They could ask them to install cameras and do certain things, but then that's going to come down to a resourcing issue for the detachment as to whether or not they can enter in those investigations. I know in the city of Kawartha Lakes, they have a process set up. They did work with the detachment commander down there, and they set up a process for when these complaints are received by the bus operator. They then capture the image. They then send it, somebody from within the school board or the bus line sends that image to the OPP, and they start the investigation and lay the charges if appropriate. So, Member Hodgson?
Well, I think it's a good idea, and I think we should support it, but it's all the same people. Kawartha Lakes is the same school board, it's the same bus company. So, I think we should support that. I'd rather have the cameras there and the council can get some money off it versus the other cameras we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm not saying I don't support the initiative. I think it's a great initiative. I don't think we can direct the detachment to enter into that process piece. The school board's gonna have to work that out with them as to when they get those images, who they go to, how it's processed, who investigates it, what sort of resources are committed to it. Does it have to happen at the moment, or can it happen by somebody who's on a light duties to follow it up or go out to the house and those sort of things? So. All right, so Mike, I don't know if you have comments.
Yeah, it's a money issue. Obviously, the school board or the school bus companies would end up charging the school board back for that equipment, which, it's essential. And I think the investigation portion of it would just simply be a matter of process that the commander could, work out with the school bus company in order to get that accomplished. And if I'm not mistaken, under the Highway Traffic Act, we can charge the owner of the vehicle. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the driver.
Perfect.
That was one of the pieces of legislation that changed under that Safe Schools Act and some other things. I see that. We'll have to move over. receive the correspondence report, and we will prepare a response to go back to the school council. Member Shevaduskas, and sorry, Liz, Miss Danielson, sorry. I'll wait for Pam to read it back.
Just hold on a second. Okay, I've got moved by member Shevaduskas, seconded by member Danielson, that the March 26, 2025 correspondence report be received and that the chairperson prepare a response to Ms. Delane.
Thank you. All in favor? Approved. Thank you very much. And we'll now move on to item 10, and this is our closed session agenda. So I'll just ask that the board resolve itself into closed session to discuss matters under the provision of the Community Safety and Policing Act, Section 44(1), Sub 2, to address personal matters about an identifiable individual, including members of the police service or any other employees of the board, and that information explicitly supplied in confidence to the board by the board, province or territory, or a crown agency of any of them, a municipality or a First Nation. Can I receive a motion for us to go in camera? Member Carter, seconded by Member Burton. All in favor? We will just wait for Pam to move us into closed session. Great, thank you. We're now back in open session. Item 11 is notice of upcoming business. You will note before we look at our date of our next meeting, when we approve the dates for the board, we are at a minimum, we are required by the act to have a minimum of 4 meetings. And I think when we looked at the calendar of what was available and when we were going to possibly take a break for the summer and that sort of thing. Okay. We did not have a meeting plan for June. I don't know how we missed that when we were looking at our dates. We went right from May. We closed shop for June, July, and August, and we opened up for our next meeting on September 24th. I'm proposing that we do have a meeting at the end of June, that looking at some of the items of business that we have to take care of, our budget that needs to be proposed, some other pieces of action that we talked about earlier today, our policies and things like that, I don't know if staff can help us as to what that meeting date would look like, but I think it'd be the third Wednesday in June.
Sorry, Member Carter, the 11th is already slated for the Accessibility Committee. And what was the other date?
25th.
25th should be okay.
Mhm.
Yep. I'm fine with the 25th. If other members are fine with the 25th, that'll give us.
On the accessibility.
I'm the staff support.
And so am I.
And yeah.
And the room is taken and the streaming.
Yeah. And I think the
So
11th.
the detachment commander.
So we'll then, it's either the 18th or the 25th. The 18th is not available, I heard. Is that a morning or an afternoon?
I can miss it. Which would you rather do?
18th is wide open on the calendar.
Back to the 18th. Well, everybody okay for the 18th then? We'll look at the morning or afternoon. Morning. Okay, so hearing morning, so we'll look at scheduling for Wednesday, June 18th. Starting at 9 a.m., what we typically do. So that'll take us to item 12 of the agenda. Is the date of our next meeting will be June 18th, Wednesday, June 18th at 9 a.m. And then we will take the break that was scheduled for July and August unless there's business that we were required to convene a meeting during that time. And then we'll reconvene on September 24th and go September, October, November. All right. And if we, I think right now we're scheduled for September, possibly November. I don't know if we have one scheduled for October, but if we find we got items that are coming up in the fall that need to be addressed, we can always convene a meeting in between. Right. So then I just need a motion for adjournment. Member Carter? Member Hodgson? All in favor? And did you get that one, Pam? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.